talk about the mysterious death of Omar Khorshid. Who was Omar Khorshid? He was an Egyptian guitarist and actor. The circumstances of his death were truly terrifying. His family, friends, and fans were mentally scarred by it, and I'm sure you will be too. Hassan al-Hafnami was a writer. He wrote Omar's secret after his death, the secret behind Omar's death. He made Hassan promise to keep this dark secret, but later said, "If I die, it's your call to either say it or keep it." This secret had a relation to the supernatural world, or more specifically, the world of jinns. Hassan said, "When I used to sit with Omar, our sittings would be long. We used to talk about the supernatural world, including jinns, demons, and souls. Our talks would last for hours." He explained that Omar was really interested in these topics. They would always try to come with explanations for the unusual world, but they would never come up with a logical reasoning. After all, their world is always full of surprises. Hassan stated that Omar had a prayer mat furnished, Qur'ans and Islamic books in his office. Omar also possessed a great amount of books talking about magic and witchcraft, very rare books on these topics. He also had books talking about jinns, ghosts, and spirit preparation. Before Omar Khorshid's death, he was focused on his prayers. He prayed on time and he read the Quran without interruption. Hassan didn't know whether Omar felt his death coming, or was he afraid of the uninvited guest? Who was this uninvited guest? On one night, Omar Khorshid was at his office, revising a project he was working on. Suddenly, the power cut off. So in response, Omar got up and lit a few candles to continue his work. But there would be a gust of wind that would blow the candles, despite the workspace being closed. Nonetheless, he would relight them. The situation repeated more than once, so he laughed and said out loud, "Is there a ghost in here or what?" He was in shock once he heard a response. "No, Omar, I'm just a friend." Omar's office wasn't in a business firm. It was his, only his. Adding to that, it was at night with no one around. Omar left his office and wondered, do I believe what I heard, or is it my mind playing tricks on me? He came up with the conclusion that what he heard was just delusions. Omar didn't return to his office that night. He went home. The next morning, he went to his office and was puzzled once he saw that the candles were lit without melting. And what was more shocking was that the candles weren't lit when he stormed out of the office. Omar tried to blow the candles, but somehow they weren't blowing out. So he took a piece of wood and tried hitting the flare. But what was horrifying was that the piece of wood caught fire, and the candles were still lit. He immediately knew this was supernatural, so he read the Quran to feel tranquility. He read out loud, and within seconds, all at once, the candles burned out. After that, Omar felt hands resting on his shoulders aggressively. At that moment, he was sure that this was something to do with the supernatural. So he raised his voice until gradually the pressure of the hands faded. In this situation, the normal person would talk about it with someone, but Omar chose not to, since he was afraid of judgment. So he kept the secret until things progressed, to the point where Omar and the uninvited guest were communicating. It was revealed that the entity was a Muslim, just like Omar. Their relationship was strong to the extent where Omar would summon him when he needs help. In order to do that, Omar says words that don't have meaning. Hassan, the writer, stated that once him and Omar were discussing a project they were working on, a project for kids and a cinematic project with the title Stealing the Golden Head. This talks about an incident where the head of Tutankhamun is stolen, where Omar would play Tut. These two projects were written by Hassan. Omar asked Hassan to stop writing Stealing the Golden Head and to write another project talking about spirits taking revenge. Omar said if you don't have ideas about this topic, you could read reports talking about it, just to have an idea. Hassan was in shock. He asked Omar, what would make you think of something like that? Omar said, these types of film attract people since it's full of mystery and suspense, and I want my works to involve these topics. Hassan started working on the topic Omar suggested. He said that when he showed Omar what he wrote, Khorshid would smile genuinely. He was excited to the point where he said, I'll direct the film. They started talking about details of the movie, like who will play the main characters. But out of the blue, Omar interrupted Hassan. Do you know why I am suggesting this idea? Don't ever think I want to direct a film because it's just full of suspense. There is a reason as to why I'm thinking of producing these types of movies. And because I trust you, I'll tell you the truth. But I'll ask you to keep this a secret between us. Don't speak out as long as I'm living. But when I die, it's yours if you want to say it. Hassan promised he won't speak about it, and it'll remain a secret. Hassan stated that Omar talked in more detail from start to end, in more detail than you and I know. Omar told Hassan that the jinn, the uninvited guest, was a frequent visitor and they would talk together. One time, the jinn was with Omar while he was in an important meeting, a meeting with an ambassador of an Arab country. And when the jinn randomly spoke, the ambassador fainted from the product of being frightened. So Omar comforted him. Don't worry, it's just a tape. The office is not haunted. But he still didn't believe, since Omar was having a conversation with an invisible person. Hassan wondered how was the jinn benefiting Omar. Omar answered him, he tells me dangerous stuff I can't say. Hassan was worried about his friend Omar Khorshid. Omar's exact words were, how can I get rid of him when he chose me? Hassan wanted to know some of the things the jinn told Omar, even if it was simple. Omar said that the jinn was 1,700 years old. But Hassan wasn't shocked, since it's known that jinns live for 1,000 years. At that point, Omar felt that the writer wasn't believing him. In order to convince him with hesitation, Omar said, I'll tell you something that I heard from him, but I don't fully understand. Your face is mirrored on shards of glass. Hassan questioned Omar on whether did he ask him on the meaning, and Omar did, but he replied with an equally strange response. It is a red volcano that sparkles over pitch-black mountains. Neither did Hassan or Omar understand what this meant, but soon understood once Omar had a car accident that resulted in his death. The glass shard slashed his neck, resulting in his veins exploding as if it was a red volcano, just like the jinn described. That night there was an agreement between a writer named Abdullah Ahmed, known as Mickey Mouse, and Omar, where Omar would transform Abdullah's words into songs. Abdullah mentioned that Omar wasn't paying attention to him and that he was daydreaming, so he told him, "I'll come by next week." Omar said, "No, I need you with an important matter." But Abdullah had an appointment with the television. Hassan stated that Omar wanted to tell Abdullah about his jinn experience, since they previously talked about these types of topics: spirits, jinns, and demons. Hassan asked what was the relation. He simply said, "Maybe I'd find someone that could help me." That night they talked about lots of stuff, including Omar's mother, Awatif Hashim, and his uncle Hassan, and his sisters, Jihan and Shayhan. Hassan, the writer, thought about how unusual it was for Omar to talk about his family, and specifically the people he was close to and loved dearly. But soon the conversation transitioned to more dark topics: the supernatural world and jinns. In the midst of their conversation, the power cut off. Omar laughed. "Our friends here?" Hassan said. "Who do you mean?" "The jinn, of course. Who else is capable of cutting off the power?" The writer's silence was enough. Omar lit a single candle, and Hassan felt a person's warmth beside him. He felt a person touching his arm. He sensed and heard his breathing. At that point, goosebumps took over his body. He was lost in his thoughts. He was away from the current place and timing. He zoned back in when Omar said, "On what?" followed by silence and, "No, not you, Hassan." Hassan knew right away that Omar wasn't talking to him, but rather the jinn. After a short while, the power was back. Hassan and Omar were exchanging goodbyes, and Omar asked the writer to book an appointment with the famous writer, Anis Mansour, the owner of books talking about the dark and supernatural topics. Omar Khorshid entered the jinn world, and clearly there isn't going back. He learned lots of things and knew things that the human mind can't process. Most alarmingly, he gained a friendship with the jinn. The jinn didn't hurt Omar in any way, and Omar did the same, and he didn't use him to hurt others. Omar traveled to Australia and came back to Egypt after a successful artistic trip. When the writer Anis called Omar for their appointment, he couldn't reach him since, sadly, Omar passed away in a horrific accident that shook his family, friends, and us. With Omar was buried a mystery. What we know is probably a fraction of what he experienced. Omar doubtless suffered, just because he dived deep into the world of supernaturals, and perhaps we shouldn't. There is a barrier separating both of our worlds, and neither any of us should cross it. Omar was married to Maha Abu at the time of his death. She was pregnant with his child, but had a miscarriage since she couldn't bear the loss of her husband. Maha lived at her brother's home, which was also haunted. Adding to that, the jinn which lived there was also old. The question is, was that the same jinn? Or was that jinn summoned accidentally by Omar upon him reading one of the books he owned, which talked about magic? And finally, that's the end of the video. Man, that was scary. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to leave suggestions. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.